I am myself, and those around me are a reflection of who I once was and who I need. I am learning. I am the notorious 2,000 feet skyscraper filled with structure and productiveness. I am filled with knowledge and power and creativity. I am only talking about myself.
There are billions of books, quotes, and video material on the subject of improving oneself and reaching your goals. On this week's episode, the Breakdown crew sat down with two very special guests, entrepreneur slash barber Emmitt Downing, and longtime friend of the channel, poet and paint night enthusiast Leigh Ann, to discuss the ins and outs of self-help. Let's see what we came up with.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Infusion Breakdown Show. It's I, Joshua Freeman. I'm also here with Bryan Carey and Desmond Tillman. We also have a special guest. Welcome back to the return, Leigh Ann. How you doing?
I'm
and also, and also the first time special guest, Mr. Emmitt Downing. How you doing?
Good. I'm good.
How's everybody been?
Holding up.
Holding up good?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm pass it off to Bryan so he can introduce the guests
Sure.
more thoroughly.
So as Josh said, Leigh Ann is a returning guest from our first iteration of the podcast. So I've known Leigh Ann for about, what would you say, 2 years? 3 years?
2 years plus.
Yeah, at least three. I think 3+ years. Okay, cool. Yeah, so she's actually, I met her through one of my other friends, and we've just been like really cool ever since. We used to work together, and she was always one of the people who was supporting my ideas and a really close friend. So I really appreciate her being here on the podcast with us today. And then also we have Emmit, who's been cutting my hair on and off since about 2013, possibly, which is crazy. So back in college, I needed a barber as everyone else did, and then I think Q put me on to you. And
Yep.
then so after I graduated, I stayed in the area, and then I was just going to barbers that was close and convenient. And after a while, that wasn't cutting it anymore. So no pun intended. And then so I reached out to Emmit about 6 months ago, and then so ever since then I started going to him, and yeah, been getting hooked up ever since. So I'm happy to have both of you guys here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for inviting
Thanks
me.
for having me.
So the question we have for today, how helpful is self-help? Comment below, let us know. But I don't know who wants to go first as far as the topic. I don't know one of our guests would like to go first, Leigh Ann or Emmit. How helpful is self-help?
I guess it's based off, experience, but to me, I think self-help is I guess there's like a line too, but what do you mean by you're just helping yourself with, or with what? Like you have boundaries on that?
The genre of self-help.
Okay, just a genre. Okay.
So like books and motivational speakers and the sort.
Okay, so with that, I think that there's more to just, everyone talks about mindset, right? There's more than just mindset. There's heartset, there's healthset, there's soulset. So I think those three other empires really help you with your, search for helping yourself to remove some trauma out of your life or cleaning up some things from your life, because it really comes down to taking care of your character, taking care of your emotions, taking care of your thoughts and your unconscious thoughts. I'm just gonna start with that.
Where does that come from?
Where does that come from? The whole mindset, heart set, soul set.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
That, and I guess I was gonna mention that a little bit later, but I got that from listening to some inspirational speakers like Rob and Sharma.
Mm-hmm.
He was a really notable writer who wrote The Monk That Sold His Ferrari, right? So he became like a really good person to listen to on my podcast videos and whatnot. And he mentioned, everyone talks about mindset. That's something that would help you to move forward in your life, but in order for that to move forward, you have to understand your heart set, your emotions, taking control of your emotions first, and your health, having a good, well-being, your body, taking care of your soul set, taking care of your character. So everyone really has the ability to change their thoughts, their thought patterns from negative to positive. But it's not just that, because you have to clean up some of the trauma that you've had since you were born, probably. You know, we all grow up, you know, with a conscious mind, but along the way we all get hurt, or along the way, you know, we're all born as creators. We're all born as creative people to help us, you know, find that purpose in our life. But along the way, we get suppressed by the mediocrity of the world. Like, we get suppressed to becoming adults, and a lot of us forget our creativity that's in our minds. Like, we go to our day-to-day, and, you know, we're emotionally attached to certain things. We hold on to certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't help yourself. You know, I guess there's a line as well to helping yourself, because that can turn into narcissism, right? And when I say that, is that people will start focusing on themselves a lot, that in turn they think that they're right. They think that they're right about all their authenticity. They want to be so authentic that they want to show it to others. But sometimes they can come out as narcissism, because they rather be right instead of kind. And I think that, you know, you got to heal yourself, but you also have to be able to heal others too, and serve purpose, and have that balance between, you know, focusing on yourself and understanding what you need to do, but also give that back, to spread that, to attract better in your life. So I guess there's kind of a lot, and I guess I kind of went everywhere with that, but main purpose is, you know, take care of your mental, your mindset, your overall emotions, your character, being kind, and that can really show how much you can help yourself, but not to the point where you are not open enough and you swing from one pendulum to another, where you're just bashing on other people because they're not like you, or they didn't go through your journey, or they're not as authentic as you. I will stop there.
Yeah, that was super powerful.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that again, because you brought up so many good points. So Emmett, you recently, I wanted to ask you about this for a long time now. So a few months ago, you attended one of Grant Cordone's conferences in Vegas, correct?
Yes, the 10X growth concert. I still have the notebook from it.
You're prepared. So what are some of the biggest takeaways from that?
Man, really, like one of the biggest takeaways from going to that event was seeing him really talk about his finances, like what he sacrificed to get to where he is. Mm-hmm. And like personally, he said a lot of things that kind of hit people's, you know, pressure points, as far as like their family and wanting to create a future success, and willing to give up and sacrifice things that they didn't have or wanted to have, but for a greater good. So like a lot of what Leigh was saying about like being able to sacrifice certain things, let things go, and like break down what you may think is important to really pursue what, you know, helps you grow. He talked about how he really like let go of certain things that he wanted. So, you know, he sacrificed, you know, that dream car that he wanted to actually build on what he had in order to grow to the point where he could actually afford it. Because a lot of things that we want, we chase after, but we really can't afford it. And it kind of dampens our, like, it hurts our ego, because like we're working so hard to get to that one place, and we really can't get there because we're so focused on the destination and not like the actual journey. So like he really talked about just like locking in and focusing on what it takes to get to where you want to go. And it was just mind blowing, because he brought in different people like Kevin Hart. He talked about finance like heavy, and it was not something we expected, because, you know, it's a comedian. He talked about like saving half your income. We're like, what? Like half? That's a
Did you know
lot.
Kevin was going to be there?
Yes, we did. But there were a few surprise guests.
Right.
But a lot of people just talked about stuff that we didn't think they would like talk about. Like Kevin Hart talking about finances. John Trevolta was talking about being a pilot, not being an actor, being a pilot. Like he has 3 planes that he doesn't have to pay for just because he's like a good negotiator, and he found a way to like to offer services and stuff for the planes that help the companies build their growth, and in exchange he got free planes and free service. And then like Magic Johnson, he's a known NBA star, but he was talking about business and how, like he has a net worth of like almost $800 million, and like it's just crazy to see those different contrasts. But they really talk about locking down and like just pursuing what you want to know, like to the full purpose, like knowing what your purpose is and pursuing it to get to your destination. That was the biggest thing I took away from it, just locking down my purpose. Like for one thing, Magic Johnson really talked about like finding your customer or client base and over deliver, and like under promise and over deliver. That was his main thing, and that's really what helped him be successful. But yeah, I mean, it was just so much, man. It's I can't really talk about it all, but like it was a lot. It was a lot. It really inspired me to keep going and actually go harder at what I'm doing.
What's the difference between you attending in person and what you could have read in, per se, Grant Cordone's books? Because he has a ton of the books, right? So, like, could you have not gotten the information from the book?
No. Being there is like, it's a whole different environment. Being there, and you see like there's an arena full of like 10, 12,000 people, and like everybody there. And I was there like networking, shaking hands, talking to people around me. And like everybody was there for different reasons. Like, I'm there personally for like businesses I'm running, but it was people in real estate. It was people in, different other sectors of their business or career industries, like dentists and people that want to, expand and scale their business, people in sales. And it was just a lot of different aspects of, business that we all came together to grow. And so like, being in that environment, you actually see how each person that was brought in for the interview could like, they had a gem for each person that was there. Like it didn't matter what you did, what type of work you do. Like somebody there that was being interviewed is gonna be somebody you can relate to. Like Floyd Money Mayweather was there, and he talked about his first real estate venture was $5 million. His first investment in real, and it's something that like, okay, I don't have $5 million, but to see somebody go from just, fighting and boxing to just, they understand real estate, it's like, okay, it gotta be something to it. If they can do it, I can do it too. So it was a lot to connect to being there versus like watching it.
So with that being said, how helpful would you say self-help is as it applies to like one's well-being and with additional finances and building your empire, your company, whatever you're doing at the moment?
I say it's the key to growth, and is self-help, like knowing your purpose, figuring out what your purpose is and actually working towards it every day. Like even if it's a small step, like if your purpose is to be healthy, just take a step of drinking water every day. That's one way to get there. Drinking more water every day, like just taking small steps to towards your purpose kind of helps you stay inspired, and it keeps you dedicated, because it's good to be motivated, but that comes and goes. Like you're not gonna feel 100% every day. There's gonna be a day you're not gonna feel like getting up out of the bed. But if you're dedicated to something, like, okay, I'm dedicated to my purpose, I have to get up because I have something I got to do. So it'll keep you going. So I say self-help is key to like, whatever you do, whatever your goal is in life.
So, you can go on, Leigh Ann. You got it.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So a little birdie told me that you was doing accounting and you left, and you're cutting hair, you're making more money doing that than actually accounting. How's that?
So when I was working on I was doing like financial auditing, and I was working for a debt collection company, and it was a good job, good benefits, great company. But I was bored, bro. Like I was bored out of my mind. Like I tell you, I listened to podcasts. Like that was the highlight of my day. So like I would leave work at 5 and go cut hair. Like I would start working part-time at a barbershop, and like in that small time from like 5 to 9, I would make my whole earning for the day. And I was just like, hold on. I had to step back and like look at the whole scenario. Like this is not adding up. Like if I'm exchanging time for money, like my time should be spent at the shop, not where I'm at right now. And so I made that leap of faith, like I want to say 2 years ago, almost 3 now. But I took that leap of faith, and I built my clientele up. You know, I had like 2 or 3 months where I was just planning it out. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. This how much money I need to make. This how much I need to have set aside just in case it don't work out. So I did that in like October of 2018. I put my 2 weeks in, and I started going full-time barbering. And it was like the scariest thing you could do is like quit something that's like you have a foundation that you built on and just fly. Like there's no down, there's no up. Like if you fall, you fall. But if you go up, you can go as high as you want to go. So like that's pretty much what happened. Like yeah, I quit my job and went full-time barbering. I tried to create different content, different commercials. I treated it like it was like a company of my own. A year later, they made me manager of the shop. And then we went from having 4 people at the shop to we have like a staff of like 16 now. And then the second year, I became part owner of the shop. So it's definitely been a journey, but I've enjoyed it, and it's probably the best decision I made. Is just following my purpose.
Did you know about self-help when you left your job, or did you discover that later on?
So I just before I left my job, I started listening to E.T., Eric Thomas, and he had that one speech where it's talking about success, and if you want to be successful, you have to want to be successful as bad as you want to breathe. So you gotta have this mindset of being obsessed with the idea of success and whatever you're trying to do, and that's pretty much what I embody. Like I would be up 3 a.m. watching haircutting videos because I wanted to master the skill. And like, I had experience cutting hair, but I just wanted to be the best I could be possibly. And yeah, just going through that, accepting every challenge that came in. Like there was times I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to figure it out because, you know, this is my way of life. So, you know, like going through that experience was definitely something that I had to keep really close to me, like self-help and staying dedicated, like I said, not just motivated, but dedicated to the cause.
Josh, how helpful would you say self-help is? Or do you believe in that? Like the genre?
Yeah, I do. I believe in it. How helpful it is? I think it's great. It's very helpful if you know exactly what's wrong, because I feel like a lot of people don't really like the knowledge or like the motivation to actually know what's wrong. So, but really, I feel a lot of our, if not all, a lot of our problems come from external factors like other people. So, my advice really is just be alone. Like first, get alone, because what you guys talking about is really like the middle part of self-help, like what you do. Well, what I'm talking about is really like the beginning. Like first you have to realize that, oh, I need to be alone, and I have to figure out some things about myself. So really doing that, being alone, is really the first step, I would say. And once you do that, you can find out a lot of things about yourself that you didn't even know before. So be alone. So social distance yourself from other people.
I see Desmond was in agreement for a large portion of what you were saying. It was like you knocked the ball at the park. Desmond, you want to add on to
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I agree with everything he says. I actually wrote down a little bit of what, or not even, I didn't write it down, but the key thing that Leigh Ann said that kind of I questioned a little bit was, you know, the narcissism after acquiring self-help. Because I know for me, I was narcissistic before I hit my lowest point. Like coming out of throughout high school, coming out of high school and then college, I felt like I was at my most narcissistic way because I felt I always needed to be right. Like I didn't see many flaws into myself. And then it was kind of like as I began to open up myself to other people on deeper levels to have like an emotional connection, spiritual connection, and physical connection, deeper than what, you know, we were going through in high school. That's when I kind of started realizing the holes within my life that just began to like collapse. Like it was more or less like I was living in a penthouse, but there was no foundation. I was that high up. So how would you kind of like, I mean, I know you kind of described it as like people forcing their product or their success through, you know, self-help onto other people, and, you know, like, oh, well, this is the way you have to go. This is the way you have to do it. Would you kind of come to the conclusion then that, you know, they really aren't, they kind of skip the step that Josh and I are going through? It's kind of like they, if you're saying that people have a tendency to be narcissistic after they receive that help, then did they even really receive the help that they need, or did it resonate with them, or is it something that they read, oh, it makes sense logically, let me pass this on, like this is what you have to do, but it's not necessarily, the logic doesn't transition into practice. Like that was the one thing I kind of I need a little bit more understanding on.
I think it's so we swing, I mean, same, like I kind of felt like I knew everything. I wanted to share, like, you know, what I knew, but to inspire others is a different story. You know, people are going to absorb what they want, what's attractive to them in their brain based on what state they are, what situation they're in. It's like telling, you know, someone who is going through depression, you know, that's not the same depression as what you went through. You know, you either have to open up and tell your experience, and, you know, that person probably is not going to, you know, listen to everything that you're saying. And you're to force feed that's, oh no, you're wrong, you should be doing it this because I went through this, you know, that's just deterring the other person, hindering them from like thinking for themselves. I think a lot of it comes off as lead by example kind of thing. You know, you're gonna, someone who you look up to, or, you know, you're not gonna be sitting there listening to all this whole lecture. You know, it's kind of like a kid. You're gonna absorb, you know, not saying, you know, because I don't have a kid, but they're gonna copycat in the first few development, you know, of their years. And just like monkey see, monkey do, like people see something they like. If they don't like the whole thing, they're just gonna absorb something, and then they're gonna take your advice, or they're gonna see you know, that you're doing this because you're trying to better yourself. But I mean, even if you're that person who you re-evaluated the fact that, oh, okay, this person's really not listening to me. I know everything. I've done everything I could to tell this person that, you know, I'm here for you. I'm trying to help you because that's what I've been through, and you're not listening. And I've experienced that with a bunch of people. And then it made me realize, yeah, exactly. Like, you're right. Like, I was being too much about myself, thinking I'm too authentic. I you know, my pride is too high, that I'm not going to tell you, you know, that person's not going to tell me that I'm wrong. You know, I had to really open up to that. And that was when I realized I'm not right about everything. It's about the kindness that comes after that. You know, you're the true being to care for that person, or it's like a reflection on yourself.
It sounds more like the poles of narcissism, where you kind of so far high up that you know, you feel like you're on top of the world, and then there could be the other pole to where you're like everything is going wrong, but you feel like you have control over what's going wrong per se. So yeah, I can understand that then. I know for me, I think I self-helped myself to death because, like I said, I went through everything first. Like I experienced all the high emotions before I went through anything in life. And so it's kind of like we touched on an episode, I think it was kind of like one of our last 3 episodes, where I kind of mentioned that, you know, Drake had a quote where he was like 23 going through a midlife crisis. And for me, that's something that resonated really well for me, because that's when I kind of like started trying to break down mentally my own depression and my own anxiety. And then on top of that, my girlfriend at the time, we're pregnant with our son. So, it's kind of like, imagine all the range of emotions that's going through, where you're a full-time student in college. You're at the time, I think I just took on like a part-time job making $8 an hour, like trying to figure out how I'm going to take care of a kid, go to school full-time, and then possibly keep a relationship intact so our kid can grow up seeing, both parents together. And I feel like setting such high expectations while being so low on the playing field, it crushed me to a point to where I didn't know what to do. Like, I think the biggest thing for me was I tried self-help first. I tried reading the books. Everything resonated well, but it doesn't translate into practice, or it doesn't translate into reality, because I didn't know myself as a person. I feel like self-help is really, really key, kind of like how Emmit said. Self-help for him has been this glorious thing because he knew, even though like listening to the podcast while you're at work, you're not necessarily taking on, the barber role full time. There's an itching for a passion. For me, I didn't have that yet. So it's kind of like I'm trying to take in this data and put it into practice for something that I have nothing, for something that I'm not even practicing myself. So, the biggest thing for me, for people on what Josh would call, or what we would consider the genesis, is like therapy. It was like once I went to therapy and I actually started talking and, kind of piecing my thoughts out in the air with the therapist and having everything repeated back to me, that's when everything clicked. And then that's what actually opened up the door to, self-help, like books, podcasts, things of that nature. Because, I was listening to before and it was like, I would hold on to stuff, but I didn't know what I was holding on for. I didn't know how it was applicable.
Right.
And I feel, it's kind of like, as I, one, matured as a person, two, made the commitment to know myself as a person, and then three, to be, a stable father in my son's life. I mean, I've always been there, but I think there's one thing to be there. It's another thing to actually be there and be able to handle the emotions that come with it. Because, I think as men, we kind of always had this provider aspect, but being a provider just isn't financially. It's also the emotional well-being, physical and spiritual well-being. Like, all that stuff has to come from, mom and dad alike, not just mom and, not just dad. So I made a commitment to that. And it was like, once I made the commitment to myself, everything just fell into line. And so that's when, when I say I self-help myself out, or I got so tired of self-help, it was like, once I like put everything into practice and into motion, I didn't feel a need for it anymore. But I still used stuff that I had, learned when I was at ground level and not knowing, how to apply stuff. So I think it can be counterintuitive, because I think people can self-help themselves into the grave, and then other people know how to apply it properly when it's most right for them.
Right.
Desmond, that's almost my exact stance on the topic of self-help. So I believe that it's only as helpful as it's being put into practice, because like otherwise you're just accumulating the knowledge, and then what are you doing with it? And what Emmett was saying earlier about self-help is that inspiration and motivation, they're very fleeting. We don't always have that, but the difference is having a drive. And so I do think that the genre itself could be a little misleading to people that think, oh, this is like a panacea, this is a cure-all for anything that's going wrong in my life. I can read this book and everything will be better, when that's not the case. You have to apply it. And I think that too often it just gets simplified into be positive, smile, be happy, and do these things. And it's just not that simple. And I think that's very misleading to the people who are consuming it.
Right. Like, it's not just about, let me send you this quote and then all your problems will go away. Like,
Yeah.
No, it can get up to that point when you can absorb it and you have to reevaluate yourself. Like, oh, okay. Like, if this person is constantly sending you podcasts or whatever, that might not be the road that person needs to take, like it's okay. When people say, oh, probably need therapy and all those things, those are your things to help you. And that's good. It's just saying that there's different lanes, there's different ways to take care of yourself. For example, like I know someone who, went through sexual abuse. There's some people who had, depression off something maybe you would think is something that you don't need to be depressed about, but comparing that is something else. But, you have therapy, you have all these, different drugs and whatnot to help you. But one person I knew, she went through a massive amount of, trauma in her life. And she thought about therapy for a long time, and she's young, and she never went. But she turned her trauma into something else. She was silent about it for a long time, and she finally voiced her opinion out, and she turned a lot of her, negativity into something that was productive for her. And she didn't go to, therapy or anything. And you would think that was probably something that you would need to go to. But she started making poems and, started like voicing her opinion about sexual abuse, and like that was her self-help. So even though that there's not a lot of people that want to go that route and make it something productive, or they don't have the resource or anything like that, then there are going to be people that say, oh, okay, let me open up and see what's out there for me. Let me go to therapy. Let me listen to this podcast. Let me read this book. Let me start a hobby, try to find something. All of that encompasses still helps you no matter what. It's just comes down to healing your trauma from in your consciousness. Like it starts off from when you were first born, I guess. Like you don't know it, but all this unconsciousness, like thinking, people, your parents telling you what to do, or if you don't even have parents, or your parents are divorced, things like that, it all starts from when your environment, who you're with, or who you're surrounding yourself with, what you're consuming in your head, and subconsciously it's informing your decision making. And sometimes, like for example, I guess I had parents that like were, the only way to communicate was to scream at each other, and I didn't realize that until like when I became in a relationship, and then that's all I used to see. How do I help myself to manage my anger and whatnot? So like I couldn't go. I thought about therapy. I didn't have the money at that time when I was thinking about it, and I just kept. And that's how I ended up going towards like motivational speakers and whatnot, because I wasn't surrounded by those types of people. So I guess it just varies it to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's definitely gradations to the quality of self-help. Like some books are really great, and then you have like the crap ones that like are just saying be happy. That's not going to help somebody with depression. It's not the right key for the lock. But I do think the best form of self-help is, or they're the books that they provide you a frame of reference. So as opposed to telling you what to do, they give you a guideline or like a framework. So they ask you like, what do you want? What do you define success as? And then so they ask you questions to consider that. So a brilliant example of this is John C. Maxwell. And so I became familiar with his books first. So I picked up How Successful People Grow. And the neat thing about him is he's a preacher, but his books aren't like overly religious, or they're not really preachy. So they relate to anybody. So they'll walk you through the different techniques to achieve like what success is for you in that particular book. And at the end of each chapter, they have these questions that you can answer, and it allows you to evaluate yourself. So you're the one, it'll ask you, okay, so what do you want to do? And then you'll say, okay, well, I want to be the chief of the fire department. And then it says, okay, well, so what do you have to do to get there? What's stopping you from getting there? What could you do today that's going to get you there? It's these questions that you can shift and map onto your life experience, and then tailor it to yourself, as opposed to saying that everyone needs to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go lift weights and do this to get that, because not all of our goals are the same. Not every answer is going to match everyone's question. It's not.
I agree. I think another thing that's really key to self-help is your environment. I know Joshua mentioned just being alone, which is important. You need that time to yourself to really ground yourself on, who you are. I think also your environment or people you surround yourself with kind of helps you, like gives you a direction, because, like if you just going at a fast speed with no direction, you're still lost. But if you have some type of direction, you have some people that are like-minded or going through some similar circumstances, y'all can exchange, situations. Y'all can talk about y'all life experiences. and relate, like it gives you a different type of direction, I would say. Because like working in a barber shop, you know, we sit here and we go back and forth and talk about our life experiences, and like hearing other people's stories that's doing what I do, but they still go or going through or have been through what I'm, you know, the different situations I go through, is grounding. Like it gives me, okay, I can go this way. Like if they did it, I know it works. So like having that sense of direction, the people around you that's like minded, I feel like is very important as far as like growing, not necessarily just growing by yourself, but growing.
If you're getting ideas from other people, is that still considered self-help? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
Where's the
I see what
line?
you're saying. I feel like if you say you got a best friend, you're in a relationship with your significant other, and you tell your best friend like, man, they're getting on my nerves today. Like today's a bad day. Like I feel like this is not gonna work out. And they tell you, hey man, I actually went through worse. But like I feel like if you just talk to them, yeah, maybe it's something y'all can communicate through. That's not necessarily self-help, but you hearing that somebody else has been through worse, it kind of gives you like, okay, well maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it's not that big of a deal. You actually have a conversation with yourself after the fact. And that, I mean, in my opinion, it's just a way of kind of.
Okay.
I would be willing to argue that it is a form of self-help, because if you think about it, the only thing different from your friend telling you something versus a book telling you something is that your friend isn't a published author.
Facts.
That is true, but I wanted to go into first. I wanted to ask Bryan, have you ever been to like a motivational speaker or like a self-help speaker, like in person?
No, but I've listened to countless hours of TED Talks and lectures, but in person, no.
Okay, because I've never been the person like to feel like if I went to a motivational speaker in person, I'll be like inspired, like, oh wow, I really needed to get up and do something about my life or something like that. So I feel it's kind of weird. I feel self-help really comes from you realizing yourself, like, oh, okay, I need to do something about my life, and then I need to take X, Y, and Z until fixing that or whatever. So that's why I feel kind of weird when you say self-help and then somebody inspires you to actually. I understand them inspiring you, then they're giving you an idea of, okay, I need to do this about my life, but where's the line, I'm asking, as far as self-help and someone actually helping you? Because self-help is bettering oneself without the aid of others, you know what I mean? Now, I'm not even talking about a book, because I understand what Desmond's talking about a book too, so where's the line? That's what I'm really asking.
I would think that self-help is encapsulated in anything. Well, the way I define it is when an individual is taking the initiative to help themselves. So whether you find your answers through, let's say if I have a problem, I talk to you about it, and then so I think through it, or if I read a book and it happens to relate to that, wherever I get that help from, if I'm taking the initiative to actually solve it, as opposed to going to you and say, Josh, I have this problem, fix it for me. That's self-help. It's like you might be in a bad situation, but you got to get your ass up out of it, and you're taking the steps to do so.
Right. And you, even though when sometimes you take the steps to do it and to help yourself, we all end up falling into the rut again. And that's where what Emmett said, creating like those habits to help yourself. Because if you fall, you're in your little rut, you're feeling all these types of emotions again. You have to be able to help yourself up again and like move forward in order to reach the goal or success or whatever you want to manifest into your life, to change yourself, change your emotional state, change, let yourself be able to be alone sometimes, breathe, find those little things to help you to inch your way into what you really, really are trying to get to, what you're really trying to help yourself with. Because even if you fall, you're failing, you feel like you're not doing the things that you're not practicing what you preach, basically. Sometimes there's a line between if you're just never helping yourself and you're just telling people this X, Y, and Z, like, how are you really helping yourself by just only having it go one way?
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. But I know it was for me. I know in not middle school, in high school, it was really all about trying to make sure everybody saw, not really saw, but like making sure everybody had a certain perception of me, because, you know, high school is. And then college, I was all about chasing girls. And then when I didn't get the reaction that I wanted, I got upset. So it really stressed me out. So really it was me. I never had the luxury of like a video, or I never like read a book that actually motivated me, or looked at it, went to a motivational speaker like Tony Robbins or something like that. I was like, okay, yeah, I need to change my life. Like I had to recognize myself. Like, okay, I don't want to go through this. It was kind of like what Desmond was saying about the sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like as I went back over and listened to those episodes, I realized my sick and tired moment was when I was like, okay, this is the last straw. I can't be messing with these girls, and then I expect something, and then when I don't get it, I'm be upset or stressed out. So really, it was me. I had to figure out how much I wanted to affect me, really, and then make sure I put myself in the right position to get there. And then I have to realize too that shit happens in life. You know, everything's not perfect. Shit happens. So
What you're saying about the sick and tired, I think we all have that. So for me, for example, there was a point in my life where I was tired of making myself miserable. I was tired of being the source of my own suffering. Most of the problems that I had were all internal. I would say all of them, actually, not most, is the fact that I would put myself in a situation, or through habits that I had acquired over the years, they didn't contribute to my well-being. So like, for example, emotional dependence. So even if somebody who's really self-sufficient, but in a relationship or something of the like that, like dating, I could remember a point in time where if things weren't going right with that, then it would destroy my mood. And so I would just fixate on that. And then I had a bad habit of rumination, where I would just replay the scenario over and over and over and over again. And then like just being anxious. It was a downward spiral. And so I was tired of being the source of my own misery. And so then I started to seek out other material. So I don't know, I went through the YouTube wormhole and I was reading books. And so one of the biggest influences, I would say, I came across 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And like some of the like really standout rules that he had in there were treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. So then I started to think, if this was somebody else that I really cared about, like my friend Josh, if Josh is going through something, and how would I approach the situation with him? If Josh was saying he had this issue, I would probably treat him with more kindness or more sympathy, and actually try to give him a solution to work. So why would I not afford myself that same luxury? I should be doing that for myself, because if I'm not doing it for myself, no one else is going to do it. And then so through coming across that material, after my moment of realizing I was quote unquote sick and tired of being sick and tired and being the source of my own misery, I began to establish myself and find out who I really was, and then also find material to supplement that and to reinforce those habits. And then also what was really big for me is the people that I was around. So like you guys are all people who I would consider friends, and we're all moving in, I would say, the right direction. We're heading towards something greater than ourselves. We're trying to do something, trying to be someone in life. And I really appreciate that. And that helps me along my journey as well. And so that was, they're not mutually exclusive. The fact that you have like a sick and tired moment, or if you're reading books, I think that most people wouldn't be reading the self-help books if they had all the answers in the first place.
Right. Exactly. That's why I feel like, we all end up attracting more good into our life the more we work on ourselves.
yeah, that's why I say, when you focus on yourself, you realize things about yourself, and then
Right.
you can be able to fix them. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say before, when Josh was kind of touching on Emmit, pause, and the and the idea of going to listen to
You was
people
waiting
talk.
to say that.
Bro. No, I wasn't. I promise. He was touching on the idea of going to like the conferences for self-help. That's how I was supposed to come out the first. One thing for me is I'm a person, I love to detect energy. Like I was talking to my mom earlier, and I told her one of my greatest skills is being able to read people for who they are and taking in that energy. That way, when they show their true colors, I'm no longer surprised. So with me understanding, like, I get the most joy as far as self-help when I'm talking to my mentor, because when we're sitting across from each other, you're able to get everybody's genuine reaction. Whereas, kind of like when we're on this call, I don't know about you, but after this call, I'm always drained because I'm receptive. I want to feel people's energy as they're talking. I kind of feel how genuine and passionate they are about what they have to say. Whereas when we're on this call, it's like, you know, everything is words. Your brain is doing most of the work, trying to break everything down, and it's sending it to all your receptors, and your body's trying to reach out and, you know, piece everything together, and there's nothing there. So for me, I would agree with Emmitt and how impactful a Grant Cardone conference or any, you know, anybody that you look up to as far as whether it be financial, spiritual, or motivational, period, you know, you get around there and you kind of get a chance to feel the word of what they're speaking for what it is. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you will look at these conferences the same thing, and the same context of how people look at church. People go to church to kind of, you know, get that feel, get that overall spiritual, you know, emotional connection to the people around them, and then the person delivering the word. Because at the end of the day, like, as we all understand, church, you can have church wherever, absent of people, or, you know, with the minimum amount of people possible. There's a reason why everybody comes together in these large gatherings to listen to one person speak, because they want that life changing, or whatever it be, that most impactful thing, to where no matter how old you get or no matter how much you do in life, you'll always be able to think back to that one point where everything made sense. And I think that's how, you know, a conference of that magnitude can be a form of self-help, because you always have to take the initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And to identify what needs to be satisfied, and then, you know, fulfill it in a way that best fits you, is, you know, that's your form of self-help. Because, you know, for me, like I said, reading everything initially, it didn't help me. When I actually went to the therapist and all my problems were simplified, like that one thing I'll never forget, and this was actually one thing that brought me a lot of joy when, you know, I would encounter people that were going through the same thing. And it was my therapist told me, whenever you're inside your head, go in the mirror and smile at yourself for 15 seconds. And it's not going to be that, you know, of course, all the receptors, you know, you get that dopamine hit or whatever, but he's like, you're looking at yourself and you're smiling, you're going to feel like a fool, and you can't help but laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And that was our trick of always snapping out of, you know, whenever I would take too much advantage of my idle time. Because, you know, like you said, this whole self-quarantining thing that you could do for your, as a form of self-help, is good because it allows you to strip yourself naked. But are you willing to deal with what you see and what you're forced to, you know, succumb to when you do strip yourself naked? Because for me, it took a lot longer to get to that point of being sick and tired once I did. Because it was like, once I stripped myself, I was like, well, damn, what do I have to stand for? You know, I don't even know myself as a purpose. I don't even know myself as a person. So what is my purpose, and what am I truly standing for? And it was kind of like, as I slowly pieced everything back together and I fell back in love with my inner child, and I, you know, understood what it was that I wanted, everything just clicked. And everything clicked in this whole, you know, kind of blanket of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because for me, I was tired of being the orchestrator of my own demise. Like, I knew I could tell somebody not to do something because I knew this would be the outcome, and I still sat back and watched that happen and chose to deal with the emotions as they come in, rather than, you know, just distancing myself altogether. Because I think as human beings, everything we do is predictable, but we love the thrill of doing it just for the sake of the result being something different than what was predicted. And I feel like a lot of, you know, if you take that energy and you put it into like what you know, you guys are saying, whereas you take that energy and you put it into positive thoughts and positive affirmations, it does great wonders. Because as I was speaking negativity into existence, I had realized that I have the ability to also speak positivity into existence. And, you know, just speak things, whether it be neutral, positive, negative, whatever. I would not be surprised, because I understood that I was taking the necessary precautions to make sure all my I's were dotted and my T's were crossed. So when things happen, I could address them as they came.
I like that you mentioned, like, it was a while back, but you mentioned like you fell in love with your inner child, right? It's like going back to, you know, self-help, you know, we all forget that we neglect the child in us. We stop playing, you know, we stop trying to learn new things because we have a structured, you know, we live through a structured world our jobs that give us that foundation, which I give you, all the kudos, Emmett, for, leaving your actual, structured foundation, stable job for something that you're passionate about. And that's something that, not saying that all of us drop our 9 to 5, we have our own ways to still create. And that takes a really big toll on like finding your purpose too. Like, I guess for me, like in that, like I stopped drawing for how many years? I stopped painting for how many years? Because I was told when I was a kid, be a doctor. You're not getting money for art from my mom, like I was so stuck in that schema, I guess, that I needed to do A, B, and C, and it made me miserable. Like when I realized in like my mid-20s or whatever that, there's more to just being in the IT field. There's more to just, being on the computer all day, glued to my computer all day. If that's your thing, that's your thing, but I felt like I lost part of that of me. So now I'm just trying to, have those times to help me realize that it's kind of like therapy to me. It makes me feel like this is my purpose. This is my gift. You have to strengthen the gifts that, that was given to you. And instead of, you strengthen your gifts and that was given to you. And then there's other things that you can practice at to be better at. And that's a lot, that has helped me a lot realize who I am. And it attracted me to a lot of people that are creators and, you guys. And that helped me realize that I can change who I surround myself with. I can change how my outcome of how I speak, how I talk, just by, like what Desmond said, like putting out more good, putting out more positivity, because we all kind of grew up a little bit hurt along the way. We needed those things to help us, whether or not it helped us or not, but yeah.
Emmett, were you about to say something?
Oh yeah, I just was touching on what Leigh had said about about like engaging in different environments that kind of promote your self-help. Like before I actually quit my job, I was working part-time at the shop, and they were like, hey, we're going to a barber conference. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take time off of work and I'll go with y'all. So I went to that barber conference, and going there, there was a speaker that talked about how to, really make a certain amount of money, basically $100,000. I got the book, but like he said, like, this is how you make $100,000 in, cutting hair. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the class for me. Like, this is what I need, because the only reason I wouldn't quit my job is because I didn't think I would make enough money to, to support my life. And after I went to that course in the conference, it really like opened my mind to like the possibilities of what I could do. And like, it's still in a sense, I had to like put the work in to get it done, but just putting myself in that environment, it really opened my mind to, to give me direction to like, all right, this is where I need to put all my energy to. But I just wanted to add on to that.
I'm sorry, Bryan. Do you have a short answer to how you make $100K as a barber for anybody listening that is like, should I go into barbering? should I be
one word is efficiency. The amount of time you spend on a haircut can either make or break you. So I mean, if you master your skills to a certain point where you can get a great haircut done in a short amount of time, you can do that. You can duplicate, and there's no limit to how much you can make in an hour.
Yeah, I kind of feel that's a little hard for be efficient and do it in a short amount of time, because I don't know how confident I am in a barber that's like really quick and has like 100 people. I mean, I'm like, yeah, you got a huge clientele, but at the same time, why are you doing my shit so quick? Like, and you
got to find that balance though. You got to find that balance. Like, if somebody do a haircut in 10 minutes, like,
you're not
what we're about. You got to build that relationship. You got to give that person time. Like, they at least want 20, 30 minutes of your time. But I mean, if you can add a whole value of services within that time frame, I mean, there's no limit to how much you can make, you know. And I don't just cut hair for money. Like, I enjoy the experience of exchanging conversation with, you know, building and growing with clientele and building that rapport with people. And it's more valuable. Like, even in college, I was cutting hair in college, and I was like, yeah, I want to create a brand and a logo and stuff. And I cut a client. He was like, yeah, I'm a graphic designer. I'm trying to build my portfolio, bro. Like, let's exchange. I got you. Say less. So you know,
I bet that's how you got in with it, Bryan. He started talking. Like, yeah, I got a podcast.
That's how I'm here, bro. Like, that's it. You think about that. Like, you do that over and over again with every person that you meet. Like, it's more than money. It means way more than money.
Yeah, rapport. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's what Desmond was speaking on. I think a thread that's run through everyone's answers here is the utility of community. So what you were saying about the church, Desmond, and then so Emmett was saying that he was interacting with the clients and building those networks, because you find people who do things that could help you out along your journey and help you accomplish your goals, or somebody who can demonstrate something for you, or just like what you were saying with the logo, or be it with us right now. Like, you haven't been on a podcast before, have you?
No, it's my first one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's like we have people coming together from different walks of life and different occupations and different things that they do, and syncing up to create something bigger. And that's what that provides. So it's different from if you were to just go and read the book by yourself, but if you're around other people who have read the book or had gone to the conference, you actually have the power of the human resource. So you can reach out to someone, and two people could create something bigger than one person can. And that's kind of like what we're founded on. It's like the three of us. If I was to have a podcast, sure, I could do it, but it wouldn't be the Infusion Breakdown Show. That's the fusion part of it. It's like, okay, yeah, we drink tea. We have an infuser. That's how we make the tea. But it's more so than just the tea. It's us coming together to create something bigger than us as individual parts.
Why they call it a double entendre.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Listening to other people's, you know, experience and their opinion and their advices like that, even though, like, you know, we all have a different, you know, opinion, all those things, it all still matches up to the same type of like what we're trying to get at, like the ultimate goal of what we're trying to get at, especially in this podcast. Like, we all seem to have the same wavelength wave, I guess as you call it. I guess, you know, your network is much more, you know, beneficial than your net worth.
Yeah, it all starts with just having those conversations.
Would you say that a lot of it, I can just simplify for self-help for me, I guess, stop complaining. And it's hard, but complaints is the lack of gratitude. And, you know, everyone talks about gratitude or whatever, but that's kind of where it starts too. Just, you know, be grateful for what you have, what you do. If you're not liking it, then do something about it. That's just the result of it.
I would say another aspect to add on to that is finding your inner peace and like knowing how to access it at any time. Like, a lot of times we deal with people and deal with different situations that like can anger us or can upset us or can just take us out of our character. But, like, you know, in search of self-help, like, if you find what makes you feel like, all right, if anything happens or anything goes left, like, at least I still have this water bottle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this water bottle is going to keep me from being thirsty. Like, as long as I'm not thirsty, I'm good. You know, but like finding that one thing that kind of brings you into like your Zen moment, you know, it helps you like in that search for inner peace, and self-help helps you stay grounded to what you're trying to do.
So, Emmett, what keeps you grounded, and what's that source of recentering you? Because, I mean, I don't think that's something that you would struggle with. So anybody who doesn't know Emmett, he's like one of the chillest people that I've ever met. I've never seen Emmett upset about anything. He's just like cool. And so I find that little surprising.
A little fun fact, I've never seen my dad upset. And it's like, you know, my parents, you know, are divorced and whatnot. So like they had their differences and everything. And so seeing that happen, like even through that situation, I never saw him upset. So like actually growing up and seeing him never get angry, like even in different, one time I got in trouble because I came home late beyond my curfew, and he beat me with a belt saying, you know what you did, but he was not upset. That scared me. Like that level of calmness, yes, it scared me. It was like, what? Like, you're not mad? I mean, obviously you're upset, but like he didn't have no different type of demeanor. It was just like, okay, I get this. Like, but in a sense, like, there's power in that. Like being in control of your emotions. Like nobody can get you, if nobody can get you out of your, character, like people gotta watch out for you. Like that's a weapon. So that's why I say like keeping your inner peace and like letting nothing get into you. Yes, it's power in that.
Definitely.
That's you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, because I mean, at the end of the day, things like someone cutting you off in traffic is so small. Like, are you really going to think about this next week? Are you really going to, unless you get out and start fighting them and then you got a court date, but are you really going to be thinking about this next week? Is all this stuff is really just small. So like, come on now. Like, is it really that serious? Come on. That's what I have to tell myself. Like, is it really that serious? Like, come on, just move on.
I really like that you mentioned, like, your dad. You just never saw your dad, calm, or not calm, or like be mad or whatever. It's different for every family and how you grow up in, and you realize you didn't carry that throughout your life, and you're the chillest person. So it's like,
it really affects, your future, like how you interact with people in the future.
Yeah, like I said, like my family, like, the only communication was just screaming at each other. Like it's just, especially with the language barrier sometimes too. It's hard to really communicate, especially if your parents are a little way older, or they're not really, not that they're neglecting you, but they're not understanding you fully. It kind of carries you. You kind of carry that throughout your life, and you don't even realize it. Like being in a relationship, and you realize that you're going way above. You're going a little bit too hard in your conversation. You're being a little too aggressive, and then that's why the whole thing comes out like, oh my God, I'm acting like my mom. I'm acting like my dad. Not saying that that's always true, but it kind of just, that's the trauma that kind of hinders your decision making sometimes, subconsciously, I mean, not unconsciously.
Is there anything else you want to add, Bryan, to this one? Any questions you have, Bryan?
No, I'm good.
No? Okay. If anybody else has anything to add before we wrap up the discussion?
I'm good.
So I can't let y'all go. One thing we've been doing since we came back is there's always one question. Being since this one is kind of self-help related, do you remember what your first self-help book was that actually made everything click for you?
My book?
Yeah, your first book on self-help that you read that kind of put everything in perspective for you.
Mind Gym.
Who's that by?
I don't know the author.
Oh.
I can get it real quick. But it was more like I didn't read through the whole thing. I was looking at it through as a reference. And there was like little activity things, like I think Bryan mentioned, like there's like questions that it asks you, and it kind of made me reflect on like, what I was doing. And there's like different bids that you go through. Like if you give someone a bad bid, you're going to get that back. Or if they're constantly giving you good bids and you're giving bad bids, like you're giving out, that was the first thing that I realized that, I'm getting all of this negativity, these bad situations, because I keep on giving out that. I keep handling things in a way where I'm just going to, get that vibe right back to me. And it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was Mind Gym. And it's not just books. I guess it podcasts for me. It was Shetty. It was Gary Vee, Jim Kwik, and Maston Kipp. So there's 3 other people, but
I like Jay Shetty podcast, but man, I can't get down with the new advertisements. Like, how there's so many advertisements in his podcast now.
Yeah, he's really blown up with his whole meditation, being a yoga.
Yeah.
Or not yoga, but past.
I know he's a monk. Yeah.
I one of his first videos that really intrigued me was on impact theory. And I watched that like 1 hour video. I'm like, wow, this really came out of, the middle of nowhere and wanted to share this through entertainment. And it did get a lot, it really got like pretty corporate, I guess. But that was the whole point for him, to people love entertainment, right? He's just using it as a platform to share what he's learned. But
what about you, Emmit?
Oh man, it's a couple. So I think Think and Grow Rich was by Napoleon Hill. That was a big book for me. It was the first book towards entrepreneurship that was given to me from my older cousin. He's like an accountant. He has his own accounting firm, and like that's the book he just handed to me when I told him I wanted to do barbering full time. So that really expanded my mind to business and like the whole idea of working for yourself. The thing about that book was, well, it wasn't just that book. It was what's the guy? Robert Kiyosaki. He had a book, I forgot, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was a big book for me too, because it broke down the different quadrants of like employee, self-employed, a boss, and I think it's some other quadrant. I forgot the name of it, but those 4 quadrants, like the whole breakdown of that, it really like expanded my mindset on like what I've been taught growing up, what society has taught me to be, what is the version of success that I'm supposed to achieve. And like, it really kind of changed my perspective. And then another book, which I'll stop at this one, would be The Simple Art of Not Giving a F. That book was like, man, like the first chapter, that's all I read was the first chapter. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna set this book down for when I'm ready for it. But it's really good. Like that one really opened my mind to like what happiness is. Like, what am I looking for? What am I trying to achieve? Like, even in everything that I've accomplished so far, it's like am I happy? Like, is this what I'm trying to get to, or do I really need to reevaluate what my situation is and what I need to go after? So those 3 books really like helped me, and I would encourage anybody to read those.
If you had left out that last book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, I would have been very upset because it's been on like your station where you cut hair at. It's
Yes.
been on your station for the longest time, and so I was just waiting for you to name drop that book. I'm so glad you did.
Yeah. I still haven't finished it, but it's a good book so far.
I'll check it out.
Agreed. For me, the very first self-help book was The 5 Agreements. I read that one like my sophomore year of college. And like I said, that was like when I was reading it, I was comprehending everything, but I wasn't applying it. The last book, self-help book I read was right before I, started the whole I've self-helped myself to death, was Unfuck Yourself. And that one literally set the groundwork for being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, it happened subconsciously. Like, I didn't even notice it. It was like a stream of events just led up to me reacting a certain way that was really, really calm. And when I realized I was like reacting very calm to situations that I normally would get mad in, and I was able to make rational decisions, that's when I realized that, like, all right, I can move freely without having any hard feelings towards anybody. Like, I can make a decision and it be my emotional well-being put first instead of someone else's. And that would be the one book that I would recommend to anybody, because when you're going through it, it's not a book that you put into practice immediately. It's like Leigh Ann is always saying, you're kind of like affecting your subconscious, whether it be positive or negative, through data that you're pulling in. And it was one of those books that impacted me so significantly subconsciously that I really didn't realize it until this dialogue today, that I read that book, and then 4 or 5 months later, everything fell into plan as it should have. It's kind of like an eye-opening experience, because I think people want results immediately, whether it be, they want that money to flip immediately, or, they want this book to get them out of a gutter, not realizing that it takes months worth of, practice and consistency to get where you're trying to go.
exactly.
All right, February if nobody else has anything else to add, then we're gonna wrap up this discussion. What do you guys think, though? Let us know. If you guys like the discussion, also hit the like button. But I want to thank our special guests, Miss Leigh Ann, Mr. Emmitt Downing. Thank you guys for coming up.
Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. Des, you have album of the week?
So one album that I've been listening to this week has been I've been listening to a lot of D'Angelo, but what I'm gonna subside it with is the album of the week is actually gonna be, let me pull up so I don't I'm terrible. It's actually going to be the Ye album by Kanye West, because I was watching a lot of his GQ interview earlier, and one thing that, and I've like fell out of, like, I used to be a Kanye fanboy, but I kind of fell out of it as like, you kind of watched his, it's a bad thing about being a celebrity. You kind of see them go through their mental health issues in the limelight. So you kind of watch him go from, ground zero to wherever he's at now. And one thing that I appreciated as a parent was him kind of like saying, he said something along the lines of, you want to create an environment that produces that multidimensional figure that we naturally are. He said that, we as a society, like from birth, we're put into our tomb. Because I don't know, you guys obviously haven't experienced childbirth yet, but as soon as they take your son out, or your child out of the womb, they go into like a little crib, which is, literally shaped the same way as a coffin. It was kind of like, you go from the coffin, you go from that small crib to the crib at home. Then you go from there to, your square walls at school. Then you go to your square walls at a higher learning facility or higher learning facility. And then you go and you work in a cubicle for, X amount of years to put forth the money or to buy a crib, which is, the box as well. Like, he was more or less advocating for a more free flowing, way of life that produces that creative spirit and, whatever you want to call it, that we're all naturally born with. So my album of the week is going to be Ye, just because of that, because that's one of the ones that I can kind of listen to in my current state with no skips.
Perfect. I heard a lot of negatives about the album, no, but hey, if you guys want to take a listen, take a listen. If you guys want to take a listen, take a listen. But of course, again, thank our special guests, Mr. Leigh Ann, Mr. Emmett, and we're going to see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Peace.
I am selfish. I am flawed. I destroy myself and those around me. My anxiety blinds me. The dark clouds of depression overpowers me. The noise of others invite me to their pain. My voice copied the same tune of my thoughts. I am hurt. I am me. I am myself, and those around me are a reflection of who I once was and who I need. I am learning. I am the notorious 2,000 feet skyscraper filled with structure and productiveness. I am filled with knowledge and power and creativity. I am only talking about myself. And although I am filled with knowledge, power, and creativity, I am forgetting the we. We glorify the more. We forgot that the skyscraper we built in this busy world used to be a field of trees with roots we have forgotten along the way. We introduced an unconscious form of negative behavior and a string of problematic situations that follow it. We live with so many distractions, we forget to clean the roots of the trauma beneath the skyscraper. We needed growth. We needed a new garden of hope. Instead, we build more. Instead, we cover the trees and roots of our beginnings. Instead, we build a foundation off of greed, because some fear of letting go, because some put others down for the nuances of their journey, because others obliviously glorify destruction and continue their patterns of suffering, because we adore the results of this new skyscraper, but forget to look beneath and above, because we maintain a city around us but forget what was already within us. Because majority lost hope. And because we can heal ourselves, but we have forgotten to heal the world.